Back with us on the SportsMax zone, West Indies kept alive their hopes of progressing to the Super 12 phase of the ICC T20 World Cup, beating Zimbabwe by 31 runs in their second qualifier in Hobart on Wednesday morning Caribbean time. After winning the toss and batting, the Windies posted 153 for 7, led by 45 from Johnson Charles and the 28 from the vice-captain Rovman Powell. Sikandar Raza took 3 for 19 and the Blessing Muzarabani 2 for 38 for Zimbabwe. Set 154 for victory, Zimbabwe were dismissed for 122, with Luke Jongwe top scorer with 29 and Wesley Madivir adding 27. Man of the match, Alzarri Joseph, took 4 for 16 off his 4 overs. Jason Holder continued his good form with the ball. He had 3 for 12. This is how the table looks after this result. So the Scots, 1 win and 1 loss from their 2 games. Same record as the Windies and Zimbabwe and the Irish. So everybody is on 2 points. It is almost a grab bag affair from here, Leighton. Net run rates will become very, very important. The Windies are in negative territory, which is why they are only 3rd in the table. And there are aspects of the performance from a technical perspective that if they were sharper and cleaner, we would have been in 2nd.
Absolutely, and of course that 17th over bowled by Odin Smith is what put the West Indies in 3rd. Because had they managed to dismiss Zimbabwe for 116, which was very, very possible, given how well Alzarri Joseph and Jason Holder were bowling, the West Indies would have been in 2nd place on that net run rate difference, because that 22 runs, I think it was in that over. 5 of them was from a no ball, and then of course 2 runs from the free hit was significant in this match. And of course, notwithstanding the West Indies victory, but it could end up costing the West Indies a place in the final 12. Yeah,
the thing is this, well, let's start with the positives, because in the Zimbabwe response, I toyed with saying run chase, but let's say response. The fact that Alzarri Joseph, who's been our best white ball bowler for some time now, and I'm very happy for him, so he's comfortably that, and aligned with the performance of Jason Holder with the ball. So our faster men, I'm tentative calling Jason fast, but our faster men getting 7 wickets combined, I think that was where we controlled the game, and where the pressure that both of them exerted should have helped us to restrict further the Zimbabwe total, falling in line with what you say about the restriction which could have boosted our net run rate.
Absolutely, and of course it goes back again to the decision to continue to use Kyle Mayers to open the bowling. In the match against Scotland, he gave up 9 runs in his first over, 15 in the second, for 2 overs for 24 runs. And they've come back with the same experiment, which yielded 17 runs for Bangladesh from the very first over. For Zimbabwe, sorry. Yes. The very first over. Those 17 runs could have been the difference between 2nd and 1st. And I don't, given how well Alzarri Joseph bowled and Jason Holder, why would you not open their best bowlers? Mm-hmm. I don't understand that decision, and it's one that backfired big time for the West Indies and could cost them.
Yeah, in terms of the batting, we were talking off air that thank goodness for Akil Hussain with the contribution he made, and then Rovman Powell with that 28, because we would have been in serious trouble.
Yeah, 90 for 2, comfortably at 90 for 2, and then suddenly 101 for 6. I mean, the middle order, there's something that has gone wrong. I know Brandon King has been ill, so he wasn't in this match, but his replacement, Johnson Charles, made 45, and they got a very good start and set up for what could have been a total well over 170. But then, like we saw in the first match against Scotland, the middle order imploded once again. Shamar Brooks, Ducks, there were no double figures for the next 4 wickets. And the West Indies found themselves in trouble. And of course, had it not been for Rovman Powell's 28 and Akil Hussain's 23, the West Indies may have very well ended up losing this match. It was critical, and it's critical that this middle order finds itself in time for the Ireland match, assuming that there is a match, because the rain is predicted for that match on Friday morning, which could end up costing the West Indies as well, because net run rate is going to be crucial, and the West Indies find themselves on the wrong side of that equation, and of course, so they can hold hope that the weather holds on Friday.
Yeah, you talk about batting and the loss of momentum, and perhaps the loss of the heads of some of the batsmen in the middle order to cause that collapse. The fact is that I can't tell when was the last time I saw the West Indies in a serious assignment batting, and you could see the batting going according to plan. We saw teams bat according to plan in the CPL. We see other big international teams bat according to plan. You never quite get that sense when the West Indies are in their innings that, oh, you can see, all right, so these two are the stabilizers. Then those two go to say, okay, these men are the ones to push the score along. Okay, these are the ones who are going to take the singles and try to disrupt the fielding patterns to get to put more pressure on the fielding captain. You never quite see that with the West Indies.
No, and it's one of the things that we constantly talk about, where it's always, you get the impression that the only way they think they can score runs is to hit the ball out of the park or to the boundary. When you look at, for example, the scoring rates, Evan Lewis's scoring rate, his strike rate, was 83.3, which means that he didn't do enough with those balls that ended up being dot balls. Because had that been the case, maybe he could have scored maybe 20, 25 off of those balls. Puran, 77.7. Remember, the strike rate is one of the key factors in T20 cricket.
Yeah.
It's not
among the most critical.
Yeah. Shamar Brooks, of course, obviously didn't score, so the run rate there. And of course, Kyle Mayers, who is the opener, who usually gets those runs to start. 108.3. All of those their strike rates were not at this level, were not what the team needed at that particular junction. And then it puts pressure on the middle order. And then, of course, as you know, when the minute you apply pressure to those guys, everything implodes. And then, the problem then comes, can the back end bail them out of trouble? And this is a consistent theme we've seen with this team, especially when it comes to crucial matches.
Yeah. Bowling-wise, the Kyle Mayers experiment, you criticized it after the first game, so you're not just saying so now. And you're critical of it again. Do you expect Puran to change it for that Ireland game, if the weather permits?
He should, because here's the thing. I understand, look, Kyle Mayers did well locally.
CPL.
In the CPL, got some swing. He took some wickets.
Different pitches.
Yeah, different pitches, different conditions. So you have to use your bowlers depending on the conditions. I'm not saying that they should never use him. If the conditions allow for that swing to take hold, then use him. But you can't use him where he's not going to get an advantage with the bowling, because he's not expressed by any means. And it gives the batsmen an opportunity to get their eye in. And of course, when you're tossing up gentle medium paces, he's going to be hit out of the park.
So pretty much what you're saying is that in the two games we've seen so far, we've given the opening batsman a pressure-free start.
Absolutely. When you look at Scotland, for example, when I saw the first 2 overs, I knew Scotland was going to get a competitive score, because they took, almost 30 runs out of the first 3 overs, 2 of which were bowled by Kyle Mayers. 24 of those runs he gave up. You don't want to give the opposing team that much of an advantage early in the game. You need to take the advantage by using your best bowler. Alzarri Joseph has been our strike bowler consistently and doing well. It's not like he's just bowling well, he's taking wickets and he's bowling fast and he's bowling accurately. Why not open with him? Maybe you end up getting some early wickets and putting Zimbabwe under pressure, and then you're taking the situation away from them.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, my producer is asking me about the captains. I was going to go to Puran. But here's where I want to take it from with Puran. For some time, the West Indies white ball captain has been a passenger, not Puran. The West Indies white ball captain, whoever that guy happens to be. Because if you go back to Darren Sammy, he wasn't taking wickets, he wasn't scoring runs, but he was a man marshalling a white ball team that, talent-wise, was among the most awesome ever assembled in the history of T20 cricket at the franchise level or at the international level. Of course, we're talking about the Gales, the Pollards, the DJ Bravos, and so forth, who that generation is gone. Chris Gale, Marlon Sammons, and so forth. So he could afford to be carried. It's not a long, there's not a lot of data in the data set, but there is enough in the data set to ask if this West Indies bunch can afford to carry a captain who's not making runs or who doesn't even bowl.
And of course, captain's leadership in any team is not just about being the captain, because there are leadership groups within a team. And those are the people who then, it's like a brain's trust, that you come and you say, okay, this is what the situation is, how can we solve the situation? I'm not convinced that Nicholas Puran does that very well as a captain. Consistently we see him struggle to, whether it's field placement, whether it's the choice of bowler in a particular circumstance, I think he's actually, it's a situation where they threw him into the deep end and then took a sink or swim, and I think he's sinking more than he's swimming. I think there are others in that team that could be leaders. I mean, Jason Holder's experience. Obviously, though, I don't think he probably would want back that captaincy. If you spoke to him privately, he'd probably say no, because he has now that freedom and it has benefited him. Robman Powell has demonstrated that he's grown as a leader in that team. He could be a captain that would actually lead this team more strategically, based on what we've seen, the growth that we've seen from him in the last couple of years.
Hold on, let me
just finish the point. Yeah. But I'm not convinced that Puran as captain is the right choice for this team, because as a captain for a team like this, you need a captain that can lead from the front, and he's not doing that.
But here's the thing. You see, perhaps this again is a measure of where West Indies cricket is at today, because we have, in the past, had captains, and people say, don't go back to the past, but we have the past, so we have to go back. In the past, our captains led from the front.
Yeah.
I tend to divide captains into two groups. You have the performance leader and you have the motivational leader. All right, good. But we've had captains across 4 months who were all things. What we're asking from our captains these days is to give us a solid contribution in your primary skill. Is your primary skill batting? Give us runs now and again. It's not that everybody's saying that every time you go to the runs because you go to the crease because you're the captain, you should make runs. But give us runs now and again. I'm finding it peculiar, Leighton, that at the time when Jason Holder's experience is at the highest, Jason Holder's status in the game is at its highest, Jason Holder's confidence in his abilities as a cricketer is at its highest, we don't have him as a captain. And in his boyhood, when he was a boy to international cricket, when he was a greenhorn on the deck, when he was an apprentice in the workshop, we had him as captain. And yet now, with all of this to his name, we don't call on him for his leadership.
And therein lies the problem, George, because, as I said, if you have the equipment, if you have the tools, why not make him the leader? As I said, this is my personal opinion. I don't think he probably would want it back, given that the pressure that he came under while he was leader of the team, a lot less experience than he is now. Would he take it back? The thing is that right now, maybe call it a move of desperation, maybe he's the best option, because he's the guy, as you said, he is now free. He has that experience. His bowling has improved leaps and bounds. His batting has been solidified in the lower order. Why not make him captain?
The Evan Lewis question before we go, late, because here's the thing. Evan Lewis, I was a huge Evan Lewis fan, and I say was. But here's the thing. Before Des Haynes revealed the conversation that took place between himself and Evan Lewis when some fitness tests were to be taken and he was giving him one-word answers, almost as if he wasn't interested in West Indies cricket, which is what the sentiment that Desmond Haynes represented from Evan Lewis. Then I understand that a rapprochement was attempted and successfully done by Des Haynes to get Evan Lewis back into the fold for this World Cup. His performances so far, we know that he's potentially destructive. But for the longest while now, Evan Lewis, Leighton, is a tap that you turn it on, you get something draining, you don't get it gushing. I have a problem with, I think we have a problem in the Evan Lewis position.
Which is why I was opposed to his selection to begin with, because if somebody's telling you that they're not really interested, why would they then force them into a situation where it may seem that they don't want to be in? And when you look at his form, it's not even with the West Indies alone. He was in the IPL as well.
But in the CPL,
he didn't do anything. So maybe he's going through a phase where, he's probably trying to find himself as the batsman that we know that he used to be, that explosive batsman who could score 100 off of 30 balls. He's not the Evan Lewis that we are used to. And right now, I don't think he probably feels like he doesn't need to be here. And it looks that way. And
there was a time when people would say, oh, but these commentators are making up stories about the man. The fact is, men lie, women lie, numbers don't.
Numbers don't.
And Evan Lewis's numbers suggest this is a man who is going through a prolonged crisis of confidence everywhere he plays white ball cricket. And the performances in the first two games at these World Cup qualifiers, not good.
Not convincing at all.
Let's look at the table before we go to the break. The West Indies in third position, net run rate, a negative net run rate. Scotland's run rate is in the positive territory. Zimbabwe hold down second. As Leighton said, there are questions about whether indeed the Windies and Ireland will take to the field because rain is in the forecast. Not just rain, heavy rain. So it's a toss-up as to whether or not the forecast will hold or whether the weather will break to allow the game to be played. Back with more on the SportsMax Zone after these.